The letter hit the counter with a soft thud as Sheriff Samuel Wilder ran his thumb across the lavender-scented envelope, one more in a collection that grew taller by the week. His reputation as the fastest gun in Cottonwood Springs had somehow transformed him into the most sought-after bachelor in the Arizona Territory, and the year 1885 was proving to be his most popular yet. Another one for your collection, Sheriff. Postmaster Jenkins grinned, pushing his spectacles higher on his nose. That makes 5 this week alone. Must be something about that badge, or maybe it's those blue eyes the ladies are always going on about. Sam tipped his hat and tucked the envelope into his coat pocket without opening it. Just doing my job, Jenkins. Nothing more to it than that. That's what you always say. Jenkins chuckled, sorting through the remaining mail, but I notice you never throw them away. In truth, Sam did discard most of them, all except one writer's letters, which he kept carefully folded in his breast pocket, close to his heart. He'd never met the woman who penned those thoughtful words, but somehow Prudence Evans had captured his attention in a way no other had managed. Outside the post office, the dusty main street of Cottonwood Springs bustled with midday activity. The frontier town had grown considerably in the 3 years since Sam had pinned on the sheriff's badge. The railroad's arrival 2 years prior had transformed the once sleepy settlement into a proper town, with new businesses opening monthly. Sam crossed the street toward his office, nodding at familiar faces along the way. The sun beat down mercilessly, typical for late June, and he was looking forward to the relative coolness of his office. He'd barely reached the boardwalk when a commotion down the street caught his attention. The stagecoach was arriving 3 days early and in quite a hurry. The driver was pushing the team hard, dust billowing behind the wheels as it careened toward the station. Sam quickened his pace, hand instinctively moving to rest on his Colt. "Whoa, whoa there." The driver pulled back on the reins, bringing the exhausted horses to a stop. "Sheriff, we got trouble." Sam approached as the driver jumped down. "What kind of trouble, Mitch?" Apache raid at Willow Creek Settlement. They hit hard and fast. Mitch wiped sweat from his brow. "We've got wounded inside." Sam's deputy, Thomas Riley, had appeared at his side. "How many?" "Just 2 survivors we found on the road," Mitch replied, opening the coach door. "A woman and her father. He's in bad shape." Sam helped ease an elderly man from the coach. Blood had soaked through a makeshift bandage on his shoulder, and his face was gray with pain. A young woman followed, her dress torn and dirt-streaked, but she moved with determined purpose despite her obvious exhaustion. "Please," she said, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. "My father needs a doctor immediately." Sam nodded. "Riley, get Dr. Bennett." As his deputy ran off, Sam took a better look at the woman. She had striking features beneath the dirt and fatigue-intelligent hazel eyes that assessed her surroundings quickly, and auburn hair escaping from what had once been a neat arrangement. "Miss, I'm Sheriff Wilder." "We'll get your father taken care of. Can you tell me what happened?" "Prudence Evans," she replied, supporting her father's uninjured side as they walked toward the doctor's office. "We were traveling to Cottonwood Springs when our wagon was attacked. They took everything. We were lucky to escape with our lives." Sam nearly missed a step. Prudence Evans. The name echoed in his mind as he felt the weight of her latest letter in his pocket. This couldn't be coincidence. He studied her more carefully now, this woman whose words had captivated him for nearly 8 months. "Miss Evans," he said, recovering his professional demeanor, "once your father is seen to, I'll need a full account of what happened." Her eyes met his, tired but resolute. "Of course, Sheriff, and then I intend to recover what was taken from us. Those trunks contained everything we own, Doctor." Bennett's office was just ahead. Sam helped guide Mr. Evans inside, where the doctor immediately took charge. "Put him on the table. Martha, prepare the chloroform." Prudence hovered anxiously as Bennett cut away the blood-soaked shirt. "Will he be all right?" "Arrow wound," Bennett muttered. "Clean through, thankfully. He's lost blood, but if infection doesn't set in, he should recover." He looked up at Prudence. "This will take some time. Perhaps the sheriff can find you somewhere to rest." Sam nodded. "Mrs. Miller runs a boarding house. She'll have a room for you." Prudence shook her head firmly. "I'll stay with my father." Miss Evans, Sam said gently, there's nothing you can do here now. You look ready to collapse yourself. Let me take you somewhere you can clean up and rest. I promise we'll return as soon as the doctor is finished. For a moment he thought she would refuse again, but fatigue won out. She pressed a kiss to her father's forehead and reluctantly followed Sam outside. As they walked toward the boarding house, Sam found himself stealing glances at Prudence. Her letters had revealed an intelligent, compassionate woman with a lively mind and dry wit. In person, despite her current state, he could see that same strength of character in the way she carried herself. "Sheriff," she said suddenly, "I realize this isn't the proper time, but have you received any correspondence addressed to me? I've been writing to someone in Cottonwood Springs, and I was expecting a reply before." Sam felt heat rise to his face. He cleared his throat. "I might have." "Who were you writing to?" "That's just it," she replied with a small, embarrassed smile. "I'm not entirely sure he exists. I answered an advertisement in the Territorial Herald seeking correspondence with a gentleman of respectable standing in Cottonwood Springs." The responses came through general delivery. Sam stopped walking. The advertisement. Of course. His deputy had placed it as a practical joke nearly a year ago. Respectable lawman seeks intelligent correspondence with a lady of refinement. Riley had thought it hilarious until the letters started arriving by the dozen. Sam had intended to ignore them all, but something about Prudence's first letter had captured his attention. "Miss Evans," he began, unsure how to proceed. Before he could continue, a wagon rattled up beside them. "Sheriff, there you are." It was Walter Hayes, owner of the local mercantile. "Just heard about the attack. Terrible business. My wife sent these." He handed down a bundle of clothing. For the lady, Martha thought they might fit. Prudence accepted the bundle with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, that's most kind." Sam guided her the rest of the way to the boarding house in silence, his mind racing. How could he tell her that he was the man she'd been writing to, that he'd kept every one of her letters while discarding dozens from other women? That he'd never written back because he feared disappointing her. Mrs. Miller fussed over Prudence, showing her to a room and promising hot water for washing. Before leaving her to rest, Sam paused at the door. "Miss Evans, I'll check on your father and return in a few hours. We'll talk more then." She nodded, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "Thank you, Sheriff, for everything." As Sam walked back to his office, he felt the weight of her letter in his pocket. He needed to read it now, knowing the woman who wrote it was finally here in Cottonwood Springs. Once inside his office, he carefully opened the lavender envelope and unfolded the familiar handwriting. "Dear Sir, by the time you receive this, I will have departed for Cottonwood Springs with my father. After months of correspondence without reply, I have determined that I must either meet you in person or accept that you have no interest in continuing our exchange of letters." Perhaps it was presumptuous to write so openly to a stranger, but I have found our one-sided conversation strangely liberating. If nothing else comes of my journey, I shall at least have the satisfaction of knowing I acted instead of merely wondering what if. We expect to arrive by the 28th. If you wish to make yourself known to me, I shall be staying at whatever accommodation Cottonwood Springs offers to travelers. If not, I understand and will trouble you no further. Yours truly, Prudence Evans. Sam sank into his chair, running a hand through his hair. She had come all this way to meet him, a man who'd never even had the courage to write back. And now, before he could decide how to handle this unexpected situation, her entire life had been upended by violence. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Deputy Riley entered, looking grim. "Doc says the old man will pull through, but he's asking for his daughter, and there's something else. I sent a telegram to Fort Wilcox about the Apache raid. They're sending a patrol, but their commander says there haven't been hostile Apache in that region for months." Sam frowned. "Miss Evans was clear about what happened. I'm just telling you what they said. Maybe it wasn't Apache." "Get 3 men together," Sam decided. "At first light, we're riding out to Willow Creek to investigate and recover their belongings if possible." After Riley left, Sam returned to the doctor's office. Prudence was already there, looking somewhat restored after washing and changing clothes. She sat beside her father, who was awake but groggy from laudanum. Sheriff, she acknowledged him with a nod. How is he? Sam asked. Stable, Dr. Bennett answered. He can be moved to the boarding house tomorrow if all goes well. Prudence, her father murmured, his voice weak. The trunk. You must find the trunk. We will, father, she soothed, patting his hand. Rest now. Sam waited until the older man had drifted off before speaking. Miss Evans, I'm organizing a party to ride to the attack site tomorrow. We'll do everything we can to recover your belongings. I'm coming with you, she said immediately. That's not advisable. If there are hostile Apache in the area, Sheriff Wilder, she interrupted, her voice low but firm. Everything we own was in those trunks, every penny we have. I know exactly what was taken and what it looks like. And more importantly, I saw our attackers. They weren't Apache. Sam raised an eyebrow. What? They were white men painted to look like Apache, she explained. I caught a glimpse of one's wrist when his sleeve rode up no copper skin beneath the paint. And they spoke to each other in English when they thought no one could hear. Why would white men disguise themselves as Apache? I don't know, but they were very interested in one particular trunk, my father's research. He's a geologist. Sam's interest sharpened. What kind of research? Silver deposits, she replied. He's been mapping them throughout the territory for a mining company in Denver. The pieces started falling into place. And someone wanted those maps badly enough to attack you for them. She nodded. Will you still argue I shouldn't accompany you tomorrow? Sam had to smile despite the situation. Her determination matched the spirit he'd come to admire in her letters. No, madam, I suppose I won't. That evening, after ensuring Prudence was settled at the boarding house and posting a deputy outside her door as precaution, Sam returned to his small house at the edge of town. He lit a lamp and reached into his dresser drawer, pulling out a small wooden box. Inside were 8 letters, each one carefully preserved, every letter Prudence had ever sent him. He reread them all, seeing new dimensions in her words now that he'd met her in person. In her first letter, she'd written about her love of learning and her frustration with the limited opportunities for educated women. In others, she described her work helping her father with his geological surveys, her dreams of someday writing a book about the American West, and her thoughtful observations about human nature. What had begun as a practical joke had led to something unexpected, a connection that felt genuine despite its unusual beginning. Now she was here, brave and determined despite all she'd been through, and she had no idea who he really was. Sam knew he needed to tell her the truth, but the timing seemed impossible. First, they needed to recover her belongings and deal with whoever had attacked her family. Then, somehow, he would find the words to explain everything. Dawn arrived with clear skies and the promise of scorching heat later in the day. Sam met his small posse at the livery stable. Deputy Riley, Walter Hayes, who knew the territory well, and Frank Morris, a former cavalry scout. Prudence arrived promptly, dressed practically in a divided riding skirt she'd borrowed from Mrs. Miller. Miss Evans, Sam greeted her, helping her mount a gentle mare. Are you certain you're up to this? Quite certain, Sheriff, she replied, adjusting her hat. Let's not waste daylight. They rode west, following the stage road toward Willow Creek. Prudence rode well, Sam noticed, keeping pace without complaint despite what must have been considerable discomfort after her ordeal. Occasionally, he caught her studying him with a curious expression, and he wondered if she was trying to determine whether he might be her mysterious correspondent. Around midday, they reached the site of the attack. The Evans wagon remained where it had been abandoned, one wheel broken and supplies scattered across the ground. Sam and his men dismounted, weapons ready as they surveyed the area. Looks like they took the horses too, Riley observed. Prudence walked among the debris, her face tight with emotion. They've taken all our trunks, every last one. Sam knelt to examine tracks in the dirt. 4 men headed north, he pointed to hoofprints. Heavily laden horses, they're carrying your property. Can we follow them? Prudence asked. These tracks are clear enough, Frank Morris said. They're not trying to hide their trail, might be a trap. Sam considered their options. They've got a day's head start, but they're moving slower with the extra weight. If we push hard, we might catch them before they reach whatever destination they're heading for. It's your call, Sheriff, Riley said. But if these are the Barton gang like I suspect, they're dangerous men. Barton gang? Prudence asked. 3 brothers and their cousin, Sam explained. They've been raiding isolated homesteads for months. Using the Apache disguise is new, though, and targeting specific valuables instead of just general robbery. Someone hired them, Walter suggested. Someone who knew about your father's work, Miss Evans. Prudence's expression darkened. It must be Hargrove Mining. They've been pressuring father to sell his research exclusively to them, but he's contracted to Denver Consolidated. Sam helped Prudence back onto her horse. We'll follow the tracks as far as we can today. If we haven't caught up to them by nightfall, we'll make camp and continue tomorrow. They rode hard through the afternoon, the trail leading them into increasingly rugged terrain. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, Frank signaled for them to stop. Campfire ahead, he whispered. About half a mile in that box canyon, Sam studied the landscape through his field glass. I count 4 men, and there are the trunks piled near their horses. What's the plan, Sheriff? Riley asked. We wait until they're asleep, then move in quietly. With any luck, we can take them by surprise. As darkness fell, they secured their horses a safe distance away and approached the canyon on foot. Prudence had insisted on coming despite Sam's objections. I'll stay back, she promised, but I need to identify our property. The outlaws had grown careless, convinced no one was following them. Only one man stood watch while the others slept around the dying fire. Sam signaled to his men, and they spread out to surround the camp. When they were in position, Sam deliberately stepped on a branch, creating a sharp crack in the night silence. The sentry turned toward the sound, and Sam emerged from the darkness, his gun leveled. Don't move, he ordered quietly. Sheriff Wilder, you're under arrest. The man froze momentarily, then reached for his weapon. Sam fired a warning shot into the ground beside him, and the camp erupted into chaos. The other outlaws scrambled for their guns, but Riley and Frank had them covered from opposite sides. Drop your weapons, Sam commanded. You're surrounded. For a tense moment, it seemed they might risk a firefight. Then the oldest of the group, Clyde Barton, Sam recognized, slowly lowered his pistol. Do as he says, boys, we're caught fair. Within minutes, the 4 men were disarmed and bound. Prudence rushed forward to examine the trunks. They're all here, she said with relief, opening the largest one, including my father's research. She held up a leather portfolio filled with maps and papers. Sam turned his attention to the prisoners. Care to tell me who hired you to steal those documents? Clyde Barton spat into the dirt. No one hired us, we're just simple robbers. Simple robbers don't disguise themselves as Apache, Sam countered. And they don't specifically target a geologist's research. Who paid you? The youngest Barton, barely 20, shifted uncomfortably. Clyde, maybe we should. Shut up, Eddie. His brother snapped. Sam turned to Eddie. Whoever hired you isn't going to help you now. You're looking at robbery, assault, attempted murder, that's hanging offenses. Cooperation might make a difference. Eddie looked at his boots, then back at Sam. It was a man from Hargrove Mining. Tall fellow, fancy clothes, said his name was Sinclair. Prudence gasped. Robert Sinclair. He's been following my father's work for months. He said to make it look like Apache, Eddie continued. Said to bring the maps to him at Silver Creek and he'd pay us $500. Sam nodded grimly. You've been used, Barton. Once you delivered those maps, you think Sinclair would have let you live to tell about it? Doubt flickered across Clyde's face. We'll see about that in court, Sheriff. They made camp for the night, taking turns standing watch over the prisoners. Sam found Prudence sitting alone by a small fire, examining her father's papers by lantern light. Everything accounted for? He asked, sitting beside her. Yes, she replied, but her expression remained troubled. These maps represent 2 years of work. Father was so careful about who knew what he was doing. Sinclair must have had someone watching us for months. We'll get to the bottom of it, Sam promised. Sinclair will be arrested as soon as we return to town. She looked at him directly. Thank you, Sheriff, for all of this. After a moment's hesitation, she added, May I ask you something personal? Sam's heart quickened. Of course. Have you lived in Cottonwood Springs long? Not the question he was expecting. About 3 years now. I came out from Boston after the war. Boston. Her eyebrows rose. You don't strike me as an Easterner, he smiled. The West changes a man, And before you were sheriff, what did you do then? Sam realized she was trying to determine if he was her correspondent. The advertisement had mentioned a respectable lawman. I was a U.S. Marshal for a time, he answered truthfully. Before that, cavalry during the war. Prudence nodded slowly. I see. She closed her father's portfolio and secured it with a leather strap. I should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be another long day. Miss Evans, Sam said as she stood. When we return to town, there's something I need to discuss with you. She paused, studying his face in the firelight. I look forward to it, Sheriff. The next morning, they loaded the trunks onto the outlaws' horses and began the journey back to Cottonwood Springs. Sam sent Frank ahead to arrange for more deputies to meet them and to alert the telegraph office to contact the marshal's office about Sinclair. They arrived in town late in the afternoon. A crowd gathered as they escorted the prisoners down the main street toward the jail. Dr. Bennett emerged from his office as they passed. Miss Evans, he called, your father's much improved, asking for you. Relief washed over Prudence's face. Thank you, doctor, I'll be there shortly. At the jail, Sam and Riley secured the prisoners while Walter helped Prudence arrange for her trunks to be delivered to the boarding house. Before she left, Sam caught her eye. I'll come find you this evening, if that's all right, after you've had time with your father. She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. I'll be waiting, Sheriff. After processing the prisoners and sending telegrams to Fort Wilcox and the U.S. Marshal's office about Sinclair, Sam finally had a moment to collect his thoughts. The Evans ordeal wasn't over. There would be a trial, and the matter of Sinclair's involvement to resolve, but the immediate danger had passed. Now he faced a different challenge. How to tell Prudence that he was the man who had kept her letters close to his heart for months without ever having the courage to respond. He bathed and changed into clean clothes, then retrieved something from his dresser drawer before walking to the boarding house. The evening air had cooled and lights were coming on in windows throughout the town. When he knocked on the boarding house door, Mrs. Miller answered with a knowing smile. She's on the back porch, Sheriff. Her father's resting comfortably upstairs. Sam made his way through the house to the rear porch, where Prudence sat in a rocking chair, reading by lamplight. She looked up as he approached, and the lamplight caught the auburn highlights in her hair. Sheriff Wilder, she greeted him. Any word on Sinclair? The marshal in Silver Creek will arrest him when he arrives, Sam confirmed, taking the chair beside her. Your father's research is safe. Thanks to you, she closed her book. We're very grateful. Sam took a deep breath. Miss Evans, Prudence, there's something I need to tell you. About those letters you mentioned, her gaze sharpened with interest. Yes, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper, her very first letter to him. I received them, all of them. Her eyes widened as she recognized her own handwriting. It was you all this time. It was meant to be a joke, he explained. My deputy placed that advertisement without my knowledge. When the letters started arriving, I ignored them at first, but then I read yours. He met her eyes directly. Your words, they spoke to me in a way nothing else had in a very long time. But you never wrote back, she said softly, a question in her voice. I meant to, he admitted. I started a dozen replies, but what could I offer a woman like you? I'm just a frontier lawman with little education and less refinement. You read my letters, Prudence said, leaning forward. All of them, Sam nodded. I've kept everyone. When things were difficult, your perspectives helped me see situations differently. Your humor made me laugh when nothing else could. Yet you said nothing when I arrived in town, even when I told you I was looking for my correspondent. I was going to, he said. But then everything happened so fast, the attack, your father's injury, the pursuit. It never seemed the right moment. Prudence was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. Finally, she asked, May I see them, my letters? They're at my house, he replied. I keep them in a box beside my bed. A blush colored her cheeks at this intimate admission. All of them, only yours, Sam confirmed. Every woman in 3 territories seems to have written to me at some point, but I've only ever kept yours. Prudence stood slowly, moving to the porch railing. I came all this way expecting to meet a stranger, possibly to be disappointed, possibly to find a friend. I never imagined that it would be me, Sam finished, standing as well. She turned to face him. that I would find myself already admiring the man before knowing he was my correspondent. Sam's heart seemed to stop. You risked your life to help us," she said. "You treated me with respect, valued my observations, allowed me to be part of recovering what was stolen. Those actions speak louder than any letter could." He moved closer. "Prudence, I'm not a man of fancy words or grand gestures, but if you'd allow it, I'd like the chance to get to know you properly, not just through letters or during a crisis." She smiled then, genuine and warm. "I believe I'd like that very much, Sheriff Wilder." "Sam," he corrected gently. "Please call me Sam." "Sam," she repeated, testing the name. "Will you walk with me tomorrow, perhaps show me around Cottonwood Springs?" "I'd be honored," he replied. "Though I should warn you, once word gets out that you're the one woman whose letters I kept, you might find yourself the subject of considerable curiosity." She laughed, the sound bright in the evening air. "I've never shied away from a little attention. And besides," she added with a hint of mischief, "I'm rather curious myself about what made my letters special enough to keep." "That," Sam said with growing confidence, "is something I look forward to explaining at length, perhaps over many conversations." "I'll hold you to that promise," Prudence replied. "After all, you owe me several months' worth of letters. Or," Sam suggested, taking a chance, "perhaps we could discuss them in person from now on." Her smile widened. "I'd like that, Sam, very much indeed." As stars appeared in the darkening sky above Cottonwood Springs, Sam Wilder realized that the woman whose words had captivated him from afar was even more remarkable in person. And somehow, against all odds, she seemed to find something worthwhile in him as well. The weeks that followed transformed Sam and Prudence's tentative connection into something neither had anticipated. Each morning, Sam would finish his early rounds and meet Prudence for breakfast at the hotel restaurant, where they would discuss everything from town politics to literature to her father's improving health. In the evenings, when his duties allowed, they would walk along the edge of town as the heat of the day subsided, their conversations flowing more easily with each passing day. William Evans recovered steadily under Dr. Bennett's care and was soon well enough to receive visitors. Sam approached their first meeting with uncharacteristic nervousness, but the elderly geologist proved to be as forthright and intelligent as his daughter. "So you're the sheriff my Prudence has been telling me about," William said, studying Sam from his seat on the boarding house porch. "She says you're responsible for recovering my research." "Your daughter deserves most of the credit," Sam replied. "She insisted on coming along and was instrumental in identifying the culprits." William smiled fondly. "That sounds like her. Never could tell that girl what she couldn't do." He fixed Sam with a more serious look. "She also tells me you're the mysterious correspondent she's been writing to all these months." Sam nodded, meeting the older man's gaze directly. "Yes, sir, though I regret not having the courage to write back." William leaned back in his chair. "Well, you've more than made up for that since her arrival, from what I hear. Prudence has always had excellent judgment of character. If she sees something worthwhile in you, Sheriff Wilder, then so do I." By early August, Robert Sinclair had been arrested and brought to Cottonwood Springs to face charges. The investigation revealed that he had been embezzling from Hargrove Mining for years, while building his own mining interests on the side. William Evans' geological surveys would have allowed him to stake highly profitable claims using stolen money. The day of the preliminary hearing, Sam escorted Prudence and her father to the courthouse. The town was buzzing with excitement over the scandal, and the courtroom was packed with curious onlookers. "Are you ready for this?" Sam asked Prudence quietly as they waited outside. "More than ready," she replied with determination. "Men like Sinclair believe they can take whatever they want without consequences. I want to see justice done." The hearing proceeded smoothly, with William providing compelling testimony about Sinclair's persistent attempts to acquire his research. When Prudence took the stand to describe the attack and the recovery of the stolen documents, she spoke with such clarity and conviction that even the defense attorney struggled to challenge her account. "The witness may step down," Judge Parker announced when the questioning concluded. As Prudence returned to her seat beside Sam, their hands briefly touched. The small contact sent warmth through Sam's fingers, and he found himself increasingly aware of such moments between them, the brush of her shoulder against his as they walked, the way her eyes sought his across a room, the lingering of her hand when he helped her into a carriage. After the hearing, which resulted in Sinclair being held for trial, Sam walked Prudence and William back to the boarding house. The August heat shimmered above the dusty street, but a promise of rain hung in the distant clouds. "I believe I'll rest before supper," William announced when they reached the porch. "Prudence, perhaps you could show the sheriff those specimens we collected yesterday?" Sam caught the slight twinkle in the older man's eye as he disappeared inside. William had been surprisingly supportive of Sam spending time with Prudence, often finding convenient reasons to leave them alone together. "Specimens?" Sam asked once William had gone. Prudence smiled. "Father's transparent attempts at matchmaking aside, I did find some interesting quartz formations by the creek. Would you like to see them?" They walked to a small shed behind the boarding house that William had converted into a makeshift laboratory. Inside, the organized chaos of a scientist's workspace spread across several tables rock samples, maps, notebooks filled with observations. Prudence showed him several crystalline formations, explaining their significance with infectious enthusiasm. Sam found himself captivated less by the rocks than by the animation in her face, the graceful movement of her hands as she pointed out particular features, the depth of knowledge she possessed. "You love this work," he observed as she carefully returned a sample to its labeled box. "I do," she agreed. "Father taught me everything he knows. We've worked as partners for years, though officially I'm just his assistant. Most mining companies wouldn't take a woman's geological assessments seriously." "Their loss," Sam said sincerely. "You're clearly as knowledgeable as any man in the field." She looked up at him, surprise and pleasure warming her expression. "Thank you, Sam. That means a great deal coming from you." They stood close together in the small shed, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Sam had never been a man to rush into matters of the heart, but something about Prudence Evans had captured him from her very first letter. Now, knowing her in person, those feelings had only deepened. "Prudence," he began, his voice lower than he intended. A crash of thunder interrupted him, followed immediately by a downpour so sudden and heavy that it drummed against the shed roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. "That storm came from nowhere," Prudence said, moving to the small window. Sam joined her, looking out at the curtain of rain. "Monsoon season. These storms can appear in minutes." They watched the rain transform the dry earth into rivulets of muddy water. The storm had trapped them, at least momentarily, in this small space together. "You were about to say something," Prudence prompted, turning to face him. Sam gathered his courage. "I was going to say that these past few weeks have been the happiest I can remember. Getting to know you, the real you, not just through your letters, has been." He searched for the right word. "Extraordinary," her eyes softened. "I feel the same way." "When you and your father complete your work here," Sam continued, "what are your plans?" A shadow passed across her face. "Father has assignments throughout the territory. We'll likely move on to the next survey area in a month or so." "I see." Sam felt a weight settle in his chest. Of course, she wouldn't stay in Cottonwood Springs forever. Her life was one of exploration and discovery, not settling in a small frontier town. Prudence seemed to read his thoughts. "Unless," she said carefully, "there was a reason to stay longer." Hope flickered in Sam's heart. "Would you want a reason?" "Perhaps." Her voice was soft but steady. "The right reason." Sam took a step closer. "Prudence, I'm not a wealthy man and my work is dangerous. I can't offer you the kind of life you might find back east. But I can promise you this: I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you." Her breath caught. "And how is that exactly?" "Like I've found something I didn't even know I was missing." He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I think I started falling in love with your mind through those letters. Now I find myself falling in love with all of you." Prudence's eyes widened at the declaration. For a terrible moment, Sam feared he had spoken too boldly, too soon. Then she smiled, radiant and sure. "Samuel Wilder," she said. "For a man who claims not to have a way with words, that was remarkably eloquent. Before he could respond, she closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, but quickly deepened with months of unspoken longing. Sam's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as her hands moved to his shoulders. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, the rain continued to pour outside, creating a private world within the small shed. "I should probably tell you," Prudence said, her cheeks flushed, "that I've been half in love with my mysterious correspondent for months. Finding that he's also the most honorable, brave, and handsome sheriff in the Arizona Territory makes it rather difficult not to fall the rest of the way." Sam laughed, joy bubbling up inside him. "Is that so?" "It is," she confirmed with a playful smile. "Though I should warn you, loving a geologist's daughter means accepting a certain amount of rock dust in your life." "I believe I can make that sacrifice," he replied, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. "If you can accept being a sheriff's wife with all the worry and irregular hours that entails." Prudence's expression grew serious. "Is that what you're asking, Sam, for me to be your wife?" Sam hadn't intended to propose so abruptly, but now that the words were between them, he knew with certainty it was what he wanted. "Yes," he said simply. "Not immediately, we should take time to be sure, but eventually, if you'll have me." Her answer was another kiss, this one leaving no doubt about her feelings. Outside, the rain began to ease, sunlight breaking through the clouds to cast golden beams across the puddle-strewn ground. "I believe," Prudence said when they separated, "that my father will be quite pleased. He's been not so subtly hinting that Cottonwood Springs might make an excellent base for his continuing research in the region." Hand in hand, they stepped out of the shed into the freshly washed world. The air smelled of wet earth and possibility, and Sam felt a sense of rightness he had never experienced before. That evening, at supper in the hotel restaurant, Sam formally asked William Evans for permission to court his daughter with the intention of marriage. The older man's eyes twinkled with delight as he gave his enthusiastic blessing. News of their courtship spread quickly through the small town. Sam endured good-natured teasing from Deputy Riley about finally succumbing to one of his letter ladies, while Mrs. Miller practically began planning the wedding the moment she heard. In late August, William Evans received a telegram from Denver Consolidated Mining, extending his contract to survey the entire region around Cottonwood Springs. The company was even willing to establish a permanent office in town, with William as chief geologist and Prudence officially recognized as his associate, a rare acknowledgement of a woman's expertise in the field. "It's perfect," Prudence told Sam as they walked by the creek where they had first discussed the possibility of a future together. "Father gets to continue his work with proper support. I gain professional recognition and, Sam prompted, squeezing her hand. "And I get to stay near a certain sheriff who keeps my letters in his pocket," she finished with a smile. The weeks turned into months. Autumn brought cooler temperatures to Cottonwood Springs, along with progress on the new Denver Consolidated office being constructed on Main Street. William Evans had recovered completely from his injury and thrown himself into organizing a comprehensive geological survey of the county. Sam and Prudence's courtship flourished, each day deepening their connection. They established traditions: Sunday afternoon rides into the countryside, Wednesday evening literary discussions at the boarding house, surprising each other with small gifts that showed how well they'd come to know one another's tastes and interests. In October, during a particularly beautiful sunset, Sam took Prudence to a hilltop overlooking the town. He had prepared a small picnic, complete with a bottle of wine he'd had shipped from California at considerable expense. "What's the occasion?" Prudence asked as he spread a blanket over the ground. "Do I need an occasion to spend time with the woman I love?" he countered, but his nervousness betrayed him. Prudence raised an eyebrow. "Samuel Wilder, you're up to something." After they had eaten, Sam reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I said we should take our time," he began, suddenly anxious. "And if you think it's still too soon, I understand, but I find myself absolutely certain of what I want." He opened the box to reveal a ring with a modest diamond flanked by two small sapphires. Prudence Evans, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Tears shimmered in her eyes as she looked from the ring to his face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Sam. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Sam felt a sense of completion he had never expected to find. The woman whose letters he had carried next to his heart would now be by his side for the rest of his days. They were married on Christmas Eve in the town's small church, decorated with pine boughs and candles for the holiday. Prudence wore a gown of ivory silk that Mrs. Miller and several other town women had helped create. Sam, in his best suit with a new watch chain gifted by William Evans, waited at the altar with Deputy Riley standing as his best man. The entire town turned out for the celebration that followed, held in the hotel dining room. Even Judge Parker made the journey from the county seat to offer his congratulations, declaring it the most sensible union I've witnessed in 30 years on the bench. Later that night, in the small house Sam had spent weeks renovating for their new life together, he presented Prudence with a special wedding gift, a mahogany writing desk placed near the front window, with a view of the mountains. For your book about the West, he explained. And for all the letters you've yet to write. She ran her fingers over the smooth surface. It's perfect, Sam, though I must warn you now that I have you in person, I may not need to write letters quite so often. I hope not, he replied with a smile, drawing her into his arms. But I saved every one you sent me. Perhaps our children will read them someday and understand how their parents found each other. Prudence's eyes widened at the mention of children, then softened with emotion. I like that thought, she murmured, resting her head against his chest. Our own little piece of history. Speaking of history, Sam said, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. That very first letter you wrote, why did you choose to respond to that particular advertisement? There must have been others. Prudence laughed softly. Would you believe it was because of a spelling error? A spelling error? Yes, she confirmed. Most such advertisements are filled with flowery language and perfect penmanship. Yours had a misspelling, correspondence was missing an R, and I found that oddly endearing. It suggested someone real, not some Eastern gentleman playing at frontier romance. Sam groaned. Riley's spelling was always atrocious, so my entire happiness is due to my deputy's poor education. That, Prudence said, rising on tiptoes to kiss him, and the fact that you kept my letters when you discarded all the others. Some things, Sheriff Wilder, are simply meant to be. As the year 1886 dawned, Cottonwood Springs continued to grow, with new businesses opening and the railroad bringing increased commerce. The Denver Consolidated Mining Office became a hub of activity, with William Evans training several young assistants, both men and women, in geological survey techniques. Sam and Prudence settled into married life with a joy that surprised even them. Their home became known for its hospitality, with weekly dinner gatherings that brought together diverse members of the community for conversation and companionship. In late spring, as wildflowers bloomed across the high desert, Prudence shared news that would change their lives forever. They were expecting a child. Sam's reaction stunned disbelief, followed by the most radiant smile Prudence had ever seen, became one of their favorite stories to recount in later years. On a crisp November morning, after a relatively easy labor, Prudence gave birth to a daughter they named Eleanor, after Sam's mother. William Evans, now a doting grandfather, commissioned a silver rattle from a craftsman in Santa Fe to mark the occasion. As Sam held his daughter for the first time, gazing down at her tiny features, he felt the culmination of a journey that had begun with a letter scented with lavender. From those written words had grown a love that now extended to this new life in his arms. She has your eyes, Prudence observed from the bed, tired but radiant. And your spirit, I suspect, Sam replied, carefully returning the infant to her mother's arms. Heaven help us all. William, who had been anxiously pacing the hallway during the birth, was invited in to meet his granddaughter. The elderly geologist's hands, usually so steady when examining mineral samples, trembled slightly as he touched Eleanor's small fingers. Magnificent, he pronounced. The most perfect specimen I've ever seen. That evening, after Prudence and Alina had fallen asleep, Sam sat at his desk and opened the wooden box where he kept Prudence's letters. He read through them again, marveling at how words written by a stranger had led to this moment, a home filled with love, a family of his own. On a fresh sheet of paper, he began to write, "My dearest Prudence, though you sleep just a few feet away, I find myself wanting to write to you as I should have done months ago when your letters first reached me. Today our daughter entered the world, and I am overwhelmed with gratitude for the chain of events that brought you into my life. A practical joke, a misspelled advertisement, letters kept in a pocket near my heart, all these small things combine to create the greatest happiness I have ever known. When Alina is old enough, I will tell her how her mother's words captured me before I ever saw her face, and how the woman herself proved even more extraordinary than her writing suggested. Thank you for your courage in coming to find me, for your forgiveness of my silence, for your love that transforms each day into something precious. I may wear a badge and carry a gun, but you, my love, are the true hero of our story. Forever yours." Sam. He sealed the letter and placed it on Prudence's writing desk, where she would find it in the morning. Then he returned to the bedside, watching his wife and daughter sleep, content in the knowledge that whatever challenges the frontier might bring, they would face them together, the sheriff who kept a single woman's letters in his pocket, and the woman brave enough to follow those letters to their source. As Cottonwood Springs grew and prospered around them, so too did the Wilder family. Alina was joined by a brother, William Samuel, 2 years later, and eventually by another sister, Grace. The children grew up surrounded by books and geological specimens, equally at home in the sheriff's office or the mapping room at Denver Consolidated. Prudence did indeed write her book about the American West, focusing on the overlooked contributions of women to frontier development. When it was published in 1892, the dedication read, "To S.W., who kept my letters and gave me a story worth telling." William Evans eventually retired from field work, but continued to mentor young geologists until well into his 80s, becoming something of a legend in scientific circles for his comprehensive mapping of mineral deposits throughout the territory. And Samuel Wilder, who had once been too uncertain to respond to a letter, found himself the author of countless love notes slipped into Prudence's pockets, books and survey kits over the decades of their marriage, each one a reminder that sometimes the most precious words are those kept close to the heart.